behind the messages, for our sermons, just kind of giving a window into, man, what thoughts go into shaping a sermon. And so as I was thinking about kind of talking about grief, you and I, Josh, we've been through a lot. We've known each other for a bunch of years. And so for those that might not know you or know our relationship, why don't you just give kind of like tell them who you are, and then I'll tell them who you are to me.
Okay. My name is Josh Turner. I've been a pastor for 17 years, I think. And now I live in Atlanta. I have a son that is 18. He's in Montana serving at a place called Refuge, serving pastors and ministry leaders. Hey, and Charlie, I got a call yesterday. He feels like he's called to ministry.
Amazing.
And I'm just like, there's part of me that's like, praise God. And there's part of me that's like, run for the hills.
Oh no.
And so like, you got that sickness too. And so he's in Montana. I have a 13-year-old little girl named Riley, who is pretty severely special needs. She's the actual 12th known case in the world of a rare genetic disorder. I have a wife that loves me and puts up with me. And we've been married.
Thank God.
Dude, for sure. We've been married for a long time. And I work for a few different organizations now. I run an organization where we help pastors stay healthy. I work for a couple of different churches, and none of it's in Atlanta. So it's Chicago, Atlanta, Fort Lauderdale. I'm like Pitbull, but if Pitbull primarily stayed like below the Mason-Dixon line.
Fair enough.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Mr. 305, right? Yeah, that's
Mr.
305.
I'm Mr. 404 in Atlanta.
That's right.
just me and Jermaine Dupri out here hanging out in these
streets. Take I-95 north or I-95 south. You'll run right into it. That's right.
You're going to see me one way or the other.
Oh man.
But yeah, so I do all those kind of things.
Yeah, and so I know you as and a friend. We've been at this together. I was thinking about this, going on like 12 years. And so I remember meeting you when I was at Southeastern, and you were thinking about planning a church. Mm-hmm. And our relationship really just kind of grew from like hanging out. Like I was driving you around as you were kind of visiting Lakeland. And then I honestly just, the Lord just really put you in our life for a really tough season. I had no idea when we first met that a couple years later, we would be part of obviously the church you were planting. We attended that. So for me, like you've been a pastor to me. Then you've been somebody that I've worked alongside with in ministry. Mm-hmm. But all along, I think the thing that I would probably classify you to me is like, you've been one of my best friends on the planet. Yeah. And we say this all the time, like
same here.
We would spill blood for the Turners.
Help you bury the bodies.
That's right, man. We've gone through a lot together, and I've been able to see your life lived out in public spaces. Mm-hmm. But I also know behind the curtain. And the beautiful thing is what you see behind the curtain is not different than what you see kind of in front. There is a consistency, like it or not, it's consistent.
Whatever you like or dislike about it, it's the same.
And I've seen like there's a unique grace on you, on your wife, on your family, as it pertains to, I think, suffering and carrying hard things and doing hard things. And so, a couple weeks back, we talked about grief kind of in this sermon series that we're in. And I really just feel like the Lord kind of dropped you on my mind, you on my heart, as somebody that could speak to this, man, just incredibly like real and authentic in a way that could help. And so I think the opening question I would have for you is to kick it off is, man, how has grief and suffering benefited your spiritual journey?
Oh man. I mean, I am who I am because of it. Like, and that's not like some blanket like answer. Like I remember, the big thing for us was when, we had Riley and she was 3 months in the NICU, and they told us that she had something called spinal muscular atrophy and she was going to live a year, and then Beck and I would have to determine when to let her go. And it broke me. Like I always said, like I could handle anything happening to me, like sickness, whatever, but for my kids, like I'm like, I would never be able to handle it. It would be the worst thing ever. And dude, it broke me. I mean, it really like, and you didn't know me when I was walking through all that stuff. But man, I like the person that I was before that, in the way and I had to allow it, right? Like you have two choices in grief and suffering. You can either get really mad at the Lord and walk away, which I've seen people do, and you've seen it, or you can say, God, like, I'm in this situation regardless. I don't want to do this without you. So I literally made a decision of like, I'm just going to submit this to the Lord, and I'm going to let him do with it what he wants. And that's hard. Like, I don't even say that like that's easy. Like it's there was a lot of anger. There was a lot of like, you know, prayers that probably had language in them that they shouldn't have had.
For sure. They had the warning label like at the bottom.
Yeah, it was the explicit one. This one's coming at you hot, Lord. But I remember who I was before all that. And like, you know how you run into people sometimes and you're like going through a hard time. They're like, hey man, praying for you. And they just like walk off, or they go, and you're like, that joker's not praying for me. Like he's just like, it's just what we say as Christians. Oh man, praying for you.
Well, that's where you catch them and just ask them when.
Yeah.
Like when will you? Later.
So when it's convenient for me. So what I realized is I was on the other side of that now. Before that, I was the pastor that was, hey man, I'll pray for you. Man, God's got you. God's with you. And now I'm the dude that is sitting and suffering. And I realized how, when people did that to me, how trivial it made me feel, and how it like added to my brokenness and added to my hurtings. Cause there's parts where I'd be like, well, no, pray for me now. And like right this second, exactly. Like get the hands in the oil. Like we're going in. And so dude, it really shaped me. And then you and I've had this conversation a ton, but theologically it crushed me. Like it just, because what I realized is there's a lot of great preachers and authors out there that say their personal opinion like it's biblical advice. And so then all of a sudden I'm in a place where some of the things I've heard preached, some of the things I've read in books, it's not panning out that way. And I've got to figure out who is God and who is Jesus in suffering. And I never questioned did they exist or not, but I didn't know how they worked anymore. And so I had to go through and really, I mean, it was a 4-year process for me really, but I really had to go through and figure out, you know, to the best of my ability, you know, the way that God and Jesus cause the world's bad things happen to good people, like just all of those different things and how they operate together. And then you have to come to a place where you just accept some things are the mysteries of Lord that you will not figure out on this side of eternity. And really, man, it creates it created a deep trust in me for the Lord. And it created a deep like sense of, and it's still like, I'm still, you know, we still walk through it. Our daughter's 13 and, you know, obviously, you know that, Charlie, but like, she's a lot. And, and so it's things that you have to put into practice of like, you know, don't worry about tomorrow because today has enough troubles of its own. And you have, and it almost like suffering and grief, like there's a little bit of it where it forces you to live in the day, because if you go too far down the road, you'll just go crazy. You know, it's every bad scenario that could ever happen is what you're going to run through your mind. At least that's the way I'm wired.
Yeah. You know? I love, you know, when you said it, a couple clicks back, it really caught my attention. You said like you made this choice. You just made this choice that, I'm choosing to go this way. And it's like, okay, God, I don't know what that means. I don't know.
And I don't like it. Do you know what I mean? Like that's
it's not comfortable. It's not, God. It doesn't lack, you know, it's not paying less. It's the sense of almost like embracing it. It reminds you when the disciples I don't, the text is eluding me, but the disciples go to Jesus and they go, basically paraphrase, where else are we going to go?
Mm-hmm.
Like we've looked around and you're it. And I don't like how any of this is shaping out, but we're still with you.
Yeah. What other choice do we have?
What other choice do we have?
Yeah.
But I think the honesty in that and being able to go like, okay, I'm in a rock and a hard place.
Mm-hmm.
And the rock right now is that, Christian cliche, right? It's the cornerstone. So I'll choose that and I'll build everything on it. But it doesn't mean that choosing that gives you all the answers or alleviates the grief or the suffering of the process. No. And so for you, I know one of your faithful friends, I think through your process, was Job. And talk to me a little bit about how Job played into of your spiritual journey. And because again, I also love the fact that you can identify it changed the way you followed Jesus. It changed your understanding of God, and it shaped you in so many areas. And I know Job was a critical piece for that.
I think, for me with Job, like, first of all, we had when something like that happens to you with your child, as you well know, like, you're just reeling. And so you're looking for answers. You're trying to make sense of pain. You're trying to make sense of suffering. And so we ended up having some very well-meaning people that came to us and were like, hey, we'd like to go pray over your daughter at the hospital. They were a part of this ministry that shall remain nameless, like Voldemort. And, and, they were under the beliefs, the way that they understood the Bible was, you did this, so God did this. One of them asked me, had my son watched Harry Potter? And because of that, we had opened a door to allow this into our family. And so the Prisoner of Azkaban is why our daughter's in a wheelchair, apparently, to this guy's theology. And I'm so broken in all of it,
right?
That and they're using scripture, right? Like, you can use scripture for the context that you want it to. And so he's like, Deuteronomy says that if you this and that, and there's a curse on your family. And I'm like, oh my God, I have a curse on my family.
Right.
We got to get rid of that wand. And so then I start reading, like, they started trying to diagnose it, right? Like, these people of what caused this. And that's Job, right? Like he everything happens. And first of all, the hard part for me with Job was at the very beginning of Job, is the devil is the one that actually recommends Job to God. God's like, God's like, everybody, there's no one as faithful as Job. There's nobody that will, like, and the devil's like, let me test it. And God says, okay.
And Job's minding his own business.
Like, and he's just out there tilling the land.
Just being a good guy.
And bro, righteous. Like, so righteous. And God goes, okay. And so, like, that messed with me, but then it hit me one day. So here I am, however many thousands of years later, and I'm sitting here reading the book of Job as an encouragement from my suffering. So I either have a choice in this moment to believe that is just random, or that when the devil said, what about Job? God said, there's going to be a guy in Florida, however many years from now, that's going to need a story that's going to encourage him.
Wow.
And so for whatever reason, I held on to this thing that God allows things, whatever your theological slant is on that, he allows things ultimately for his purpose. So then, you and I had talks about this all the time. Like, my biggest struggle was, does God cause or allow suffering?
Right.
And dude, I still wrestle with that at times. I feel like I've come to a lot better place with it. But I really do. It was a massive, massive struggle for me. And it wasn't, and listen, honestly, I want God to cause it, because if he causes it, there's purpose in it.
Right.
Like, if God caused our daughter to be special needs, then there's a purpose. He did it for a reason. And I trust his heart. Like, I don't always like the outcome, but I trust his heart. And then even if he allows it, well, he allows it for a reason. So you can go both ways with it.
Yep.
But I was such a head case in it. And I think I was a head case because I was a preacher as well. And so like, man, I would just reread the book of Job over and over and over and over again. And the thing that really helped me was, dude, Job says some pretty brutal stuff to the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And he's very honest in it. And what it showed me was God can handle my anger, and he can handle my frustrations. I think so many times when we've, and maybe I'm wrong in this, I hope not. But I think so many times we feel like we have to talk to God a certain way. And dude, I can't tell you how many of my prayers had cuss words in them during that season.
Sure.
And still do from time to time.
Right.
And I think that God, I think God just wants us to keep approaching him. And he can handle my brokenness, and he can handle my anger. I think he just, like, if my kids are angry, I still want them to come to me and talk about it. I can handle their anger. And so that really helped me a ton. But then the main thing is Job is trying to figure out why this is happening, right? That's kind of the entire book, is why is this happening? Why is God allowing this? Why did God do this? He's got 3 crappy friends that are trying to diagnose his sin of why God did this. And I think it's in, chapter 37 or 38, God finally responds to Job. And when he responds to him, the first thing God says to Job from the whirlwind, he says, who is this that darkens my wisdom without words of knowledge? And so right off the bat, God comes out hard. You know what I mean? Right. Like, and so, but the beautiful thing is till the end of the book of Job, God is just saying things like, where were you when I freaking kept the oceans at their borders? Where were you when I placed the stars in the sky? Where were you? Can you bind the behemoth? Can you? And he just lists all these magnificent things that he has done. And Job's response is, it is I, Lord, I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know. And it became this thing for me that there are some things on this earth that are too wonderful for me to know. And I've got to stand on that and choose that.
Man, I think it's incredible when you say that there are things on this earth that are too wonderful for me to know, and you're saying it in the context of your own suffering. That it's almost as if your suffering is added to the list of those things where, because what God's really saying to Job, right, is look at my power, look at my sovereignty. It's almost like he's trying to give Job proper perspective.
Yeah, that's what he's doing.
Of who's holding it all together.
Yeah.
But I think I've always appreciated, I think, your honesty, the rawness in which you not only share and talk about, but the way I've seen you wrestle. I've seen you kind of dance around it. But I don't know, it really catches me when you say, there are things too wonderful for me to know. And I know you're actually referencing your own suffering in that too, that God, I don't get to know. Because if I'm honest, there's the frustrating part of Job's narrative for me is it's all restored at the end, and that's a terrible way to preach that, right? Hey, everything in your life's gonna die.
But I'm holding on for that. At some point, give
it all back to me, God.
Yeah.
But
give it all back.
There's never a why. Job never gets that.
There's no closure.
There's no closure.
No.
How do you pastor us in that, Josh? How do you move through in that tension of, I want to know, and God has the answer.
Yeah,
we don't get it.
That's frustrating. I mean, it is. I mean, there's a lot of things. I think for me, the thing that I've seen, just even with something you and I walked through over the past couple of years, like, I think I've seen all the good come out of it. Right. So I've seen our daughter and like the voice that she has and helping people and what it's done in our life and the people that she has led to the Lord and how it shaped our son who's in Montana and caring for people and
now going into ministry.
I'm gonna try to talk him out of it.
Exactly. Just like, Hey, but I have people say to me along the way, like, if I can talk you out of it, God didn't call you to it. Like,
yeah, exactly. That's what I used to say to people. I'll have him,
if I can shake you from it.
I'll have him come to the house, and me and you will light torches and sit in black robes and just try to scare him. Anyway, like, so I think, like, I look at God's track record, and I realize I don't need an answer, and I don't need closure to understand his heart.
Wow.
Like that's for me. Like, I need closure because I have issues, but my issues are not with the character of God. They're just because I don't understand things. And I finally came to this place of, like, dude, I can't program the freaking clock on my microwave. Like, how am I going to understand the sovereign God of the universe? And I think part of it too is my family and I, we've made this decision, and this is what I see a lot of people do when it comes to suffering. And I think part of the reason that people aren't returning to the church the way that we would like them to is because the things that they have been taught were weak theology. And some of the things they were taught about, you pray it, you do it, God's going to come through, he's got you.
Right.
Well, we're still in a million-year pandemic, and the world's burning to the ground, and I think people are like, oh, well, that doesn't work,
right,
so I'm not going to whatever. But I think the thing that we've learned is, and this is really hard to do, I have to remind myself that God is not part of my story, that I am part of God's story.
That's huge.
And there are, and I think what everybody does, because we live in such a self-centric world that tells us it's all about us, self-help, live your best life, do whatever. There's no, like, that's a bunch of bullcrap. Like, that's not God. God is not working on this earth solely for us. God has purposes that he is trying to do on this earth. And I'm a part of his story. Yep. And I say this, and I think you've probably heard me say this. I don't say this in like some fatalist sort of Eeyore,
right,
type of way. Like, but I feel like part of my family's calling is to suffer and to point to Jesus. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like God looked at my family and said, I can trust them with this pain, and they'll still use it for my glory. And it sucks. I mean, I'm not like, you know what I'm saying? I'm not like, thanks God. Like, I feel like I could learn a lot by winning the lottery as well, and do a lot of good in the world. But I'm also getting a Benz.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that's right. The thing. I think that's the thing, man. It's like, if I understand and can somehow get it in me, in my belief, that my purpose on this earth is the purposes of God.
Yeah.
And somehow maybe my suffering leads to help his purposes on this side of eternity. And I try to stay there with it. And and there's good days and bad days. There's, I literally have a phone call today with my counselor from Orlando, because it's like, dude, our daughter's 13. She's a lot, and it wears. And I love her, and she's amazing. Yeah. And I'm asking him, like, help me learn how to cope with this.
Right.
Like, I need some tools to, when I get in a mood and I can't get out of it, where do I go? How do I process this? And so, I think it's, there's a spiritual component too, but when it comes to suffering, there's also a freaking mental component and an emotional component that I think in the church world, we sometimes want to gloss over because we want everything to be spiritual.
Yep. No, and I love where you said it's the sense of that God could trust you with it.
Yeah.
I look back to when, like, our family, walked through a very difficult season.
Yeah.
Like, your family is one of the families where we look at and we go, man, I don't know if we navigated as well. Yeah. If we don't have you guys, if you guys haven't walked this road and can go, hey, wait a second, I can't tell you the whole road, but I got a lantern, and here's a few steps on this. Like, I remember going to doctor's appointments and then, like, calling you right after the doctor's appointments and going, like, hey, this is what I'm hearing, this is what I'm feeling, and you being able to kind of like help walk through that.
Yeah.
in a personal sense, and then watching you in different ministry components walk that out and see like, oh, wait a second, like you're the teller of hard stories, not just for one family, but it's for others. I think the ability to have that perspective, I think, is a grace of God. I think God gives you that window. And I think also, even if there's, people that are like watching this or whatever, like if they're going through something, I think there's the thing to pray for. God, not why, but what.
Yeah.
Like,
I always tell people, and a lot of us, we get stuck in asking the question of why. And I did for 4 or 5 years. And so what I always try to teach people is quit asking the question why, because you're never going to figure it out. I mean, if you're making stupid decisions, you probably need to be like, you know what I mean? If you keep getting arrested, that's not the Lord. You're an idiot. Like that's what it is.
Commit crimes better.
I remember, dude, this is a true story. I remember when I was at Florida State, and I may or may not have gotten arrested. And I got arrested for a DUI, and I was in jail. I can remember, like, God, how could you let me out? And I'm like blaming God. And I think God's like, yo, dog, that was Jack Daniels and Jose Cuervo. I had nothing to do with that.
That's all you. Right.
So if you're making bad choices, you need to figure that out. But like, there's some things that, man, you just have to hold on to. Like, you're not going to figure it out on the side of eternity. One day you will. But so I always want to help people quit asking the question why, and I want to help people ask the question, what do you want me to do with this?
That's great.
Like that's the God, what do you want me to do with this? And what's your other option? Figure it out on your own. That's terrible.
No, for sure. Because if there's purpose, if your pain can be purpose, then it doesn't feel like it's in vain.
100%.
Yeah. And there's a sense where, and there's a season, because I remember having that wonderful cliche and saying that to my wife, and she's like, yeah, that'll help. Yeah, that'll help. I think there's a time when a truth can be too heavy for the moment you're in.
Yes.
But then you kind of mature into it, because we've looked at, and there's a lot of other things I wish the Lord would have marked our life with. There's a 100%. Lot of other stories I'd love to tell.
Yeah.
But when we look back and we go, oh, God, you have used our situation in countless ways that I would not be as good a pastor.
No,
without it, without suffering, without grief. Like, and so I think there's part for me, like whenever a hard season comes, and there are degrees of it, right? Grief has there's small grief and then there's big grief.
Yep.
But anytime that stuff comes, there's a sense for me where it's like, okay, God, there's a purpose in this that I want to steward well.
Yep.
And I want to move through this well, because I know in a way that I wish was different, it's actually forming me into who you are, who you designed me to be.
Yep. Yeah.
And so,
dude, I mean, it makes me think of, you and I went through we were a part of an organization that we're both no longer a part of. And it was super hard, and I was there for 17 years, and I had to do a lot of counseling, had to do a lot of like emotional stuff and mental stuff. Because it was some deep wounds. And I'll never forget, out of that, me and a friend started a ministry called the 1010 Project, which you're a part of, and that we help pastors stay healthy, and we help pastors who are hurting or, wherever they are. And what was so crazy is it was this past year, I'm doing my daily devotional, and I know you don't do this, but sometimes I miss days, you know what I mean? So it just so I mean, look at all this.
I'm 1900 days straight.
That's impressive. Good Lord. I can't even spell 1900. And so so the first day that all you guys were flying in for the inaugural trip, or we start working with pastors on, I read Genesis 45:5. And it's when Joseph reveals himself to his brothers, and he says, you didn't do this to me. Actually, the Lord did this to me, and he did it so that I could save many. And he sent me ahead of you. And I think with suffering and hardships at times, and you look at the Bible, God, everybody that God uses, they suffered, you know what I mean? Right. Like massively. And I think sometimes with suffering and trials, it's the Lord looking at you and us and going, I'm actually going to send you ahead because I need you to help save many. And I don't think that you can truly help people in their suffering until you've had deep suffering. And I mean, sure, you can give advice,
right?
But empathy and advice are two different things.
For sure. It's got a different texture.
Oh, bro, it's
weathered.
And here's the thing. I mean, especially like for us as a pastor and you guys too, like, what advice are you going to tell me that the Bible says that I probably haven't figured out in the past 17, 18 years I've been doing this?
Right.
I don't need advice. I need someone. We weep with those who weep and we rejoice with those who rejoice. Like, and sometimes the best thing that we can do is sit with someone in their suffering and cry. That's it. You know? So that's good.
Yeah. That's good. Man, I appreciate you taking out just a few minutes and chatting.
Yeah, man. Yeah, somehow it's my unfortunate wheelhouse.
That's right. No.